And let me share our. So I'm going to go through some of the basics of academic freedom at ASU and then talk about it just kind of generally also. What does it mean to have academic freedom? All right, so you should see, we're gonna go through the ASU's policy in the ACD manual, the provost page, what it says, some similar things, but it deepens ASU's policy. And the provost page uses what is called the Chicago Statement on academic freedom. So we're gonna look at that. And then think about challenges to academic freedom. I'll tell you about some of the ones I faced, and then hopefully hear from you, what you faced and what ways that we can all learn to overcome together. And think about the purpose of academic freedom. I think the ASU manual actually does a good job of laying out the purpose. I'd like to see if there's other philosophers out there, what you think of how it states the purpose of academic freedom. So overview, this is what was sent out to describe the talk, partly from the ASU language, just using ASU's own language here, that ASU has a strong commitment to academic freedom. And this is seen in ACD 201, where it's stated that academic freedom is necessary for the common good. And as a philosopher, that stood out to me. I love that sentence. Necessary for the common good. So we're going to talk about that today. What is the common good? And how is freedom, why is freedom necessary for it? Might think sometimes that freedom hinders the common good. So I hope we can debate that or discuss that. We can use academic freedom and discuss it. And then the Provost webpage quotes from the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education as giving ASU a green light rating for its commitment to free speech, and states that ASU is the largest research university with that rating. So that's kind of nice, right? It's when you go to conferences, if you want to brag about ASU, you can use that statistic. And yeah, I think we live at a time when that questions the value of academic freedom and free speech. You can let me know if you think that's true. That's my impression. In humanities, freedom of inquiry can be threatened by a lack of methodological diversity. Social media presents challenges about which views should be censored and raises problems about harassment for unpopular views and slander. They can do lasting damage to reputations. I hope you haven't been subject to that. I have been, and it's very hard to go through. And it can damage people because what's on the internet stays on the internet, right? And people can say whatever they want on the internet. And so that can harm academic freedom. So that's why I said in the overviews that we'll look at challenges. How can these challenges be addressed in a way that preserves and encourages the common good toward which academic freedom aims? So what does the ACD manual say? 201, institutions of higher education exist for the common good. How do you like that statement? They don't exist to make money, unless you think, I guess, money is the common good. They don't exist to make you famous. I guess unless you think being famous is the common good. They exist for the common good. I like that. I thought it was a good sentence. What do you think, Bertha?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I mean, I have trouble explaining to non-academics why tenure is so important.
Tenure, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a different topic. Well, I'll defend that in another meeting. This is just academic freedom. Tenure is a piece of that.
In the way that tenure protects you and so it supposedly enables academic freedom, right?
Right, yeah, right, exactly. That's what tenure is meant to protect your situation so that you're not dependent on other things and worried about your opinions possibly costing you your job. But what do you think just about this sentence? The purpose of higher education is for the common good, and the common good depends on academic freedom. So academic freedom is a necessary prerequisite for the common good. And I don't mind if you jump in, if I pause, I might have a pause and I think to myself, oh, no one is jumping in, so I don't pause long enough, and then you don't jump in. So you can jump in, or you can raise your digital hand. I think there's a little digital hand you can raise. Now,
Owen, this is Pam, actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a non-philosopher,
yeah.
I mean, I guess, like, when we try to describe this and we describe what the common good is, I mean, how do you describe that to someone who is not a philosopher?
Good question.
You know?
And I have a slide
Oh, good.
after the ACD. I go through about 3 slides on ACD, and then I have a slide about that. I don't mean to push off your question, though, because that's exactly what we should be asking, right? What is the common good, and how to make sense of it to non-academics who might wonder, man, what does a professor do with themselves, and why do you need academic freedom? And Bertha brought up tenure, which is, no one understands that unless you're working in the academy, right? If you try to explain that to people outside the academy, it's like, wait, you get what? So yeah, that's a good question. So let's see if that gets answered, and then if it doesn't, remind me. So here, after the colon here, it kind of gives the definition here of freedom: the free search for and the free exposition of truth. So the common good is not that, but it requires that. Those are two distinct things. And if you were to take that away, you wouldn't be able to pursue the common good. So that's right there, right away. The ASU policy manual gives that definition. That might sound like a philosopher wrote it. I don't know who wrote it, but it certainly is philosophical. And that's why I sort of liked it, because it gets right to the nuts and bolts of how does freedom work. So it says academic freedom applies in both research and teaching. Freedom in research is essential for the true advancement of knowledge. And if I could draw arrows here, can you see my arrow when I'm moving it around?
Yeah,
Like
we can
that?
see it.
Okay, so truth and knowledge, I don't think they're making a big distinction here between those. As Bertha and I would say, knowledge is when you have a belief, and beliefs are either true or false. But here I just think what they're drawing attention to is that you're doing research to increase knowledge, the truth of things. And then in teaching, you're doing that same thing with your students. You're have your rights protected to teach your students, so you have the free exchange of ideas between the teacher and the student to the teacher. So then it lists, these are points from the same ACD 201. Freedom in research, these are protected at ASU. Freedom in research and the publication of results. That's protected, number one. Number two, freedom in teaching to discuss a field of competence without restrictions or content or methods. So someone can't tell you what to teach in your classes as long as it's within the field of competence for that class, right? If you're teaching one subject and you decide to talk about current events and it's not really in that subject, then you're outside your field of competence. But although we have administrators, the administrators from some different field aren't going to come into your class and tell you in your field of competence what and how to teach. So you have freedom to do that. Or within a department, let's say a majority of your department wants to do content one way, well, you still have the freedom to do it in this way. So in research, teaching, and then as a private citizen, freedom to speak on public issues. Now that means emphasizing private citizen, which means not during the workday in your office using ASU materials. But you're not prohibited, because you're a professor, from going to events. Obviously, political ones are the ones that are on people's mind now. Political events, because you're a teacher, professor. And for freedom to be judged by one's colleagues in accordance with fair procedures in matters of promotion, tenure, continuing appointment, and discipline on the basis of the faculty members or academic professionals' professional qualifications and professional conduct. So you're judged not on something else, but by peers who understand your content and understand your professional qualifications on that basis, not on some other basis, like they don't like your political opinions or they don't like your personality or something like that, right? So that's protected there. And then this, again, I'm not really bringing up tenure, but Bertha brought up tenure. Tenure is an important means for protecting those things. So you're not vulnerable to constantly losing your job over your opinions. Any questions about those? Those pretty straightforward. Some of this just is for your information, so you know what rights you have and what rights are protected at ASU. Now, it continues this way. The pursuit and communication of knowledge at ASU are to be free from restrictions and include respect for the following: The right of all to search for truth and knowledge without obstruction or restraint. So the pursuit and communication of knowledge, that's the common good. Coming up to a slide, Pam, that's about that, but you asked earlier, Pam, what's the common good? Knowledge is the key common good that ASU is aimed at. And if you don't have academic freedom, you're not going to be able to produce knowledge. So the right to search for truth without obstruction or restraint. And one of the things we'll be talking about today is harassment. Harassment is a kind of obstruction that gets put in your road, right? To keep you from being able to search. The right of all to attempt to persuade by reasoned argument or peaceful process. We'll see this come up again in the Chicago statement. Academic freedom revolves around your freedom for you to pursue truth and then to try to persuade others through reasoned argument, not through some other method. Intimidation, violence, threat, those are more like harassment, right? But that also means not all positions are equally defensible. So just because you believe something doesn't make it true. So you have academic freedom to have a reasoned argument, not academic freedom to just believe anything. And 3, the right of all to form judgments based on full and free exploration, exposition, and discussion. And think about how ASU especially makes that part of its mission of the right of all people, right? To form judgments, not to have a university defined on who we don't admit, but based on who we do admit. So how do we protect that right to full and free exploration, exposition, and discussion? So here's a common good, back to your question, Pam. So truth or knowledge, putting those into the same thing for our purposes today. That's a common good. And is there any doubt that's the common good that the academy, the university is aimed at? It's okay if you do have it. You might say, no, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's something else. Might say, producing patents of inventions that help make life easier. That's the purpose. Well, that's kind of a function of knowledge, right? You couldn't produce those things if you didn't have knowledge. That's more like an effect of knowledge, where knowledge is still the goal. So academic freedom or freedom of inquiry is a necessary condition for the pursuit of knowledge. Now, I think that's kind of a platitude at the academy level, right? People would agree on that. So we'll have to look and see if there's ways, not from outside the academy threatening the academy, but are the ways within the academy that we actually don't encourage differences of opinion. For example, how well are we or our students able to identify and explain the theories or the viewpoints of people who we disagree with in a way that the other person would say, yeah, that's what I think. That's a very rare skill these days. Usually when you hear someone describe a person they disagree with, they do it in a way where that person they disagree with would think they've been mischaracterized and say, no, that's not what I think at all. So how about just that ability? People I disagree with, think about hot button areas that get your emotions up in politics. Can you explain what the other group thinks in a way that they would say, yeah, that's my view, you got me right? Or just in a way that mischaracterizes them and they would say, no, you don't understand. So that could be rare, right? It's a rare skill these days, unfortunately. It's one of the ones I know we try to teach in critical thinking classes. How can you explain positions, even if you don't agree with them? What's the best representation you can give of those positions? Now, all of this, interestingly, assumes knowledge is possible. And we have kind of a weird relationship with that in the academy, because on the one hand, you might say, yeah, we can know things. On the other hand, the academy is usually marked by what's called academic skepticism, which is say, no, we really can't. At the end of the day, we don't know anything. They're just opinions. But this whole discussion so far from the ACD manual assumes we can have knowledge. We can come to have know the truth about the matter. And not every opinion is equal. I wonder if it's kind of dawned on you yet. It's going to get more clear in the Chicago statement. Not all opinions are equal. Some of them aren't well reasoned. We don't have to believe them. So while this protects academic freedom, it also protects us from having to have false opinions hoisted on us. We have the freedom to say, no, I have a reasoned argument to show why that's false. I don't want to believe it. And then what I was describing a moment ago, critical thinking to identify our assumptions. How well we're able to do that for ourselves and how well we're able to do that for people we disagree with. Do we recognize our own assumptions that we bring to a discussion? Can we identify them ahead of time and point them out? A lot of times we can't, and that's what ends up getting people frustrated between each other when they talk about hot button topics. So common good, I think that you could describe that to a non-philosopher, couldn't you? Knowledge. We want knowledge. We want to know things, and we can know things. Oh, that last one. The purpose of doing these things together is to solve problems and settle disputes. And here's an interesting feedback loop that happens. We might not identify the same problems because of our assumptions. Maybe I should have numbered these bullet points. Number 4, critical thinking to identify assumptions. Different sets of assumptions identify different problems in the world. And so what might seem really important to one person, like this is the biggest problem in the world, another person, because they have different assumptions, will say, well, I don't think that's that big of a deal. And so we may not even agree on what problems to solve, but we need to have the freedom to pursue the problems we've identified. We don't all have to agree on the same problems, or else we would lose that academic freedom. And what's really important to one person may not be to another person because of those assumptions. But we have the freedom to pursue the problems we want to research. All right, now the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. This is from the Provost webpage now. Arizona State University has a long-standing commitment to free speech, a commitment that the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, FIRE, I guess, recognizes when it gave ASU its green light rating in 2011. And at the time, I don't know the update from this to now, it's 9 years ago. At the time, FIRE pointed out that ASU, with a total enrollment of more than 60,000 students, is the largest university to have a green light rating. And earlier this year, in a letter to President Crow, FIRE said, it sincerely appreciates that ASU is currently one of only 30 institutions in the entire country to earn our highest green light rating for campus free speech. We commend the fact that ASU has ensured that its policies and regulations fully protect the freedom of expression of its students and faculty. So that's a good thing for ASU. Freedom of, this is talking about freedom of speech, which is related to, although not identical to, freedom of academic freedom. You couldn't seem to have academic freedom without freedom of speech. So this is protected for both faculty and students. And the provost adopts the Chicago statement, which it posts on its webpage, which is the version I guess ASU adopts. There may be some slightly different version that ASU doesn't have. This is the one ASU posted. Because the university is committed to free and open inquiry in all matters, it guarantees all members of the university community the broadest possible latitude to speak, write, listen, challenge, learn. I like those. You have all of those. All right. I see, incidentally, I'm going to look at the chat. I saw someone was trying to get admitted, and there might be chat questions. That's a good way to post questions if you want. Alexander, could you explain your question for me? And then now I have a box right in front of the PowerPoint. I can't see it.
Oh, not really a question. You were just asking whether there were other, and this is going way back, so let's not backtrack.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
This is going back to the questions.
That's a good place to put questions, everybody. I should have had that up. So speak, write, listen, challenge, learn, except insofar as limitations on that freedom are necessary to the functioning of the university. The university fully respects and supports the freedom of all members of the university community to discuss any problem that presents itself. So I like this because it's problem-based, right? And as I was mentioning a moment ago, not everyone may think all problems are equal importance, but each person's free to identify problems that they want to solve and then pursue what they think are the best methods for solving those problems for people. That's part of knowledge production. I think we talk here a lot about being a knowledge entrepreneur, but the idea of you're producing knowledge, there's something you're doing, and it has a purpose. It's not just simply abstract to add more volumes to the library, but it's supposed to solve problems that present themselves to society. And then here's some more key terms. I list these at the end. The freedom to debate and discuss the merits of competing ideas does not, of course, mean that individuals may say whatever they wish, wherever they wish. The university may restrict expressions that violate the law, that falsely defames a specific individual, that's slander, that constitutes a genuine threat or harassment. I'll talk about those a little bit later too. And then unjustifiably invades substantial privacy or confidentiality interests, or that is otherwise directly incompatible with the function of the university. So there are limits on free speech, right? This is the standard yelling fire in the crowded movie theater. The debate and discussion of ideas for the solving of problems is different than just saying whatever comes on your mind at any moment. That's more like emoting. And emoting and academic freedom aren't the same thing. And it qualifies, as it says, these are narrow exceptions to the general principle of freedom of expression. Because you can imagine that someone could try to use those things I just mentioned to inhibit the freedom of people they disagree with, right? And say, well, your view is going to harm the normal functioning of the university, so I'm going to make your view illegal. So no, these are meant to be very narrow exceptions to the general principle of freedom of expression. And that's a third one. We've had academic freedom, freedom of speech, and now freedom of expression, which is also slightly different and is broader. And it is vitally important that these exceptions never be used in a manner that is inconsistent with the university's commitment to a completely free and open discussion of ideas. And so that centers around the idea that you can debate ideas by presenting a reasoned case for them. That's not just the same as blurting out whatever comes to your mind at any moment. And that presumably not all ideas are equally reasonable. You can't argue for false ideas. So that's why you have this free and open discussion, something like what John Stuart Mill said about a freedom of the press. You want bad ideas to come out and be debated, because then it's exposed that these aren't very good ideas and we shouldn't believe them. So the freedom of academic freedom should not be confused with freedom to just believe anything you want. You do have the freedom to believe what you want, but you won't be able to reasonably debate it if it's false. And the attempt to do so publicly helps to highlight that it's false. Continuing with the Chicago Statement, in a word, the university's fundamental commitment is to the principle that debate or deliberation, so there they are, two central ideas, may not be suppressed because the ideas put forth are thought by some or even most members of the university community to be offensive, unwise, immoral, or wrong-headed. It is for the individual members of the university community, not for the university as an institution, to make those judgments for themselves and to act on those judgments, not by seeking to suppress speech, but by openly and vigorously contesting the ideas that they oppose. So that's what I was just describing, relying on John Stuart Mill and freedom of the press. You don't suppress it by not letting ideas be discussed. You suppress it, if you're going to, that's a tricky word, by showing that it's false. And that happens by having open debate and deliberation. So we can think about this. Notice these words here. I'll highlight it. No, won't let me. Oh, there it is. Won't let me highlight it. So offensive, unwise, immoral, wrong-headed. Now, a few slides back, I was mentioning your ability. Are you able to describe the beliefs of the person you disagree with in a way that they would say, you got me correct? It's a hard skill for people to do because they easily slip into straw men and characterizing the other person's argument in a weak manner, right? So that's what these would be, right? You might find another person's position offensive and unwise. Are you able to show that through debate and deliberation, or you just slip into name calling? That's what this is protecting, the ability to, you can do it through debate and deliberation. And I actually think that skill, unfortunately, is becoming less common because of social media, and that's strange, right? You think maybe because people are in more contact, this skill would be going up. So more contact, the skill would go up, and it's not that way. The more contact, the more the skill goes down, right? And they're not able to do that anymore. They just tweet back really offensive things. So as a corollary to the university's commitment to protect and promote free expression, continue with the Chicago statement, members of the university community must also act in conformity with the principle of free expression. Although members of the university community are free to criticize and contest the views expressed on campus and to criticize and contest speakers who are invited to express their views on campus, they may not obstruct or otherwise interfere with the freedom of others to express views they reject or even loathe. What a strong word, huh? To this end, the university has a solemn responsibility not only to promote a lively and fearless freedom of debate and deliberation, but also protect that freedom when others attempt to restrict it. So somebody might not like another person's view and might do things to keep that view from being publicly expressed. And that's a violation of what the Chicago Statement is saying, of the rights we're given in the Chicago Statement. Again, going back to this principle, are you comfortable with this? False, bad, quote, bad ideas is actually, it doesn't make sense categorically, but we speak that way. A bad idea, it means a false idea, incorrect idea, harmful idea. It's okay to have those publicly expressed because you also have the ability to publicly refute them. Are you okay with that? Or does it make you uncomfortable to say, no, I really wish we didn't let people share their ideas? And then who gets to be the deliberator of that? That's what these is protecting, right? The individual gets to deliberate on what they want to believe. You're not told by the university or the government or some other institution, here's what you have to believe. And that's how it should be, isn't it? I mean, it really wouldn't work. Anyway, like Thomas Jefferson takes that up. Even if you told people what to believe, they would just say, yes, I believe it in order to avoid trouble, but in their mind, they don't really believe it anyway. When he's talking about religious freedom, he says, if you were to do that, you would just fill the pews with hypocrites. So it's not really even possible to make people do that. All right, so academic freedom, key terms from these. How are we doing? Good. Debate, discuss, deliberate, speaks. These are those words: write, listen, challenge, learn. Aren't these the fundamental skills that we want to teach our students? This is like 101 level stuff, right? Or really, I guess I hope my students come to university knowing how to debate. Not usually, but I wish they did, right? Or how to discuss things. How about that? Think of all the internet discussions, quote unquote discussions going on right now, and how almost probably 99.9 of them aren't actually discussions, are they? They're just assertions back and forth at each other until it degrades into insults. So how do we learn how to discuss things with people that we really disagree with? That word loathe from the previous slide. You could loathe someone's beliefs and still be able to discuss with them without losing your temper. Is that possible, you think? It should be. And deliberate. That's I suppose you can deliberate in your mind, right? You can kind of have a dialogue with yourself, of course. But think of the difficulty in learning to deliberate with each other. And really how beautiful and precious that is when it does happen, but how rare it is, right? Because no matter how similar two people are, there's going to be some differences of opinion. And being able to talk with people that you have disagreements about and deliberate on how to move forward, even in light of those differences. Wouldn't that be a wonderful skill to have? And then these terms here I picked up from that Chicago statement: being able to speak, when I talk about slander and libel in a moment, that's sort of the difference here. Slander is spoken, libel is written. So knowing how to speak well, you should teach that under rhetoric. How to present your ideas. And not everyone can do that very well. It's a skill you have to learn. Some people might be naturally talented at it, but everybody can get better at it. And knowing how to do that. And realizing that just because you have an opinion doesn't mean anybody should believe your opinion. Maybe you shouldn't even believe your opinion, right? You need to have an argument for it. And then being able to write, I think we all probably face troubles with that, right? Getting our students to write well. I can tweet really well. How many letters does that restrict you? 150 letters? I can write a Facebook paragraph. Can I write a paper for the purpose of communicating my thoughts to someone who may disagree with me? That's a great part, right? When you write a paper, it's not for yourself. That's a journal article, I guess. A paper would be for other people who might disagree with me. I'm explaining myself to them. And then learning how to listen. That's another great skill, isn't it? I don't know that the social media encourages people to listen. And I think, actually, among these, tell me what you think. For the skills we expect our students to have, isn't listening the one we take for granted the most? Because most of us, especially in classes like the ones I teach, we have significant amounts of lectures. But the truth of the matter is, our students may simply not know how to listen. So you're up there and you're talking at them and they have no idea what to do. Like, all right, I guess I write down some things this person's telling me. But that's a skill also, isn't it? Learning how to listen to someone you disagree with. I wonder if you could time that. Like that'd be if they had a competition for like a gold medal in the Olympics for patience. This is what they do. You'd sit down with someone that you completely disagree with on everything and time how long you can sit there while they're telling you their opinions without losing your temper. And that would be like the patience gold medal. He lasted 10 minutes before he just blew up. That was great. So learning how to listen and then how to challenge people, right? Think about the kind of challenges people do on Twitter. You're stupid, right? Just dumb thing like that, right? Insults right away. But actually learning how to challenge them by thinking about what they're saying, about their assumptions, and then raising questions about their assumptions. Say, look, I see where you're going here, but I don't agree back here at this point. Can you explain that more? And again, I don't think that our students probably know how to do that, right? And then culminating through all these, I think learn came last on purpose, because learning how to speak, write, listen, and then learn how to learn anything. So academic freedom that we're protecting for ourselves involves all these skills that we also want to teach to our students. Now think about impediments to freedom, and I actually wanted to leave space after harassment because I want you to add some in with me. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list. But libel means written defamation. And so the internet, right? Someone writes an internet page and says, it's not just false things about you, because that's part of debating, right? But libelous things mean things that harm your reputation. So that's different than just saying, I don't agree with you on this point. I think you're wrong. That's not libel. But writing things, this is a bad person who does bad things. Now you're into libel because you're harming someone's reputation. It could hurt their future job possibilities or current job possibilities. Or slander. Slander is a similar thing, but spoken word, right? We might call that gossip also. And people say slanderous things about each other. If somehow you could do a computer program that I wouldn't want this because this will be part of censorship, but just do a thought experiment. You have a computer program that doesn't let you put libel up on Twitter. How many tweets would be left? Right? Now, both of those legally, if you think you've been targeted by either one of those, the legal standard is you have to show that it harmed your reputation in a tangible manner. So for example, I didn't get a raise because my boss heard slander about me, or I didn't get this job because that company heard slander about me. So legally speaking, that would be the standard, because they have to have something to recompense. You have to be able to put a number on it. I lost X amount of money because of it. But I'm also thinking about these just in the moral level, the moral harms these do to academic freedom and why we'd want to protect against those things. So people I disagree with, I don't want to hear slander about them, even though I disagree with them, because that harms academic freedom. So no, don't tell me good employers, la, 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 not listening. I don't want to read libelous things about people I disagree with, because that harms academic freedom. I want to actually have debate and discussion, not these things. And then harassment is kind of an addition to those. Again, I'm thinking about this in a moral level, not just a legal level, because at the legal level, if you think you're being harassed, call the campus police. I've had to do that before. I've had students harass me to the level where I had a particular student where I had to call the campus police. So That's a resource if you feel like you're in danger. But at the moral level, harassment just means someone can't get over something. I don't know, maybe they got a bad grade and they can't get past it, and they're harassing you, and then usually that turns into some kind of libel in order to justify themselves. So those are impediments. People don't want to deal with that, and so you'd rather say, "Oh, I'd rather just not deal with the grade, so I don't have to deal with these kind of difficult things." But what are some others impediments that are there some that you faced? Now, if you haven't, that's good. You say, "No, I've never felt my academic freedom threatened." You might not. I think in my experience, ASU has been and demonstrated from these policies so far. ASU has been very friendly to academic freedom to pursue whatever avenue of study I've wanted to pursue. I've never felt that ASU has said to me, "Don't do this or that." I know there's more or less popular things to study, so there might be impediments like that that are not official, but they're what you might call social, in the sense that maybe academically they're academic fads, right? Every 10 years or so. So something may not be currently popular and you still want to study it. All right, let me look at this, Carla. I think one challenge is that individuals have their own personal definitions of these terms. The policy helps define them under how the university would look at these issues. Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you ask somebody, do you think you guys had a discussion? One person might say yes, and one person might say no. It wasn't a discussion; it was a yelling match or something. So yeah, people come to these with different definitions, and we can probably clear that up to some extent, right? That's why I said, like, I challenge my students with this. Think of someone you strongly disagree with, and then explain their position in a way that if you gave them that paper, they would give you a thumbs up and say, "Yeah, you got me right." So that's just the first level of just being, before you talk to the person, don't go talk to them yet. Just say, "Here's what so-and-so thinks. I really think they're wrong, but here's what they think." And then next, we've had a strong suggestion that objections to COVID policy be routed through official channels. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good one. That's a good applied example, Alexander, because back a few slides at the ASU policy, it said, "Except as is needed for the the running of the university," right? So COVID stuff will probably fit underneath that and say, look, these things are necessary for the continuation of the university. If you don't agree with them, that's too bad. Now, here's the thing, though. I don't think ASU would inhibit your ability to debate those things. Let's say you wanted to put a panel on about how you don't agree with masks. I think ASU would let you do that. Even though they have a policy in place that says you'll need to wear a mask as you come to the meeting and as you leave the meeting, you could debate it, and that might actually change some people's minds. Or what's the little app we all have to sign into every day? You could have a debate about that. Does this little app help? So while there is a policy in place, as I understand it, ASU would let you debate the policy, even if they do require you to do the policy right now. What other ones? Impediments. I think academic freedom, my worry about it is this. It's a cliche. We all assume academic freedom, but we may not have it clearly defined, and we may not notice things that threaten it. So Pamela, certain faculty in the past have had enough power to shut down potential activities. Oh yeah, I'm sure that could still happen. And junior faculty are afraid of senior faculty. Yeah, right. So there's still those problems. So when it said we're judged by our peers in the ACD 201, well, the junior faculty know that the peer committees are the senior faculty, and that they might bring in things either intentionally or just unconsciously, which could shape how they're assessed. So that's true. That's why we have, how many levels in like tenure? We have like 7 different committee levels to do our best to protect against any one person be able to throw the whole thing off. But yeah, I wonder, I mean, look, think about there's the other point you made, Pam, about certain faculty in the past having enough power to shut down some potential activities, which is like contrary to what the manual said. You shouldn't be able to do that. You should be able to openly just debate them. And debate doesn't mean you go to them and scream while they're trying to present their position, right? It means they get to present their position and someone else can present their position. But think about extremes. People might say, oh, look, so we have academic freedom to protect flat earthers. And we have to have Flat Earth Conference. ASU has to sponsor the Flat Earth Conference now. So you can have extremes like that, right? Well, yeah, I'm not particularly interested in that myself, but what they would have to do is defend their position against others. And I guess one reason why people kind of sigh, take a deep sigh, if you talk about flat Earth, is because it's already been debated and set aside. It's done, right? So the question for that one comes up like, how many times do we have to keep debating this? We already have arguments to show that the Earth is a sphere, not flat. So that's a good question. Like, why do certain problems keep coming up and why do we have to keep debating them? I'm not sure it's up to the university to say, we're done with this one. It'd be at the individual level where people just get kind of tired of discussing flat Earth. So sometimes that could happen. Academic freedom gets curtailed because extreme examples come up like that. But really what we're talking about are the heated examples that get everybody's frustration levels up, right? Religion and politics, the things they tell you don't talk about at Thanksgiving, the things that Bertha and I purposely studied, right? Those things are protected, right? So unpopular positions, yeah, so Alexander gives a distinction between ridiculous and loathsome. And that was the word used in the Chicago statement, right? A view you loathe. I guess for me, and so you give an example, if certain groups are human or not. I wonder if as a philosopher, the things I notice of what's important are a little different. What I mean by it is this, I tend to notice the assumptions rather quickly of a position and want to debate those. So if someone wants to debate if certain groups are humans or not, I merely am interested in their epistemology. Like, how would you settle that? Like, what have you used to come to that conclusion? I like to debate that because I suspect your faulty epistemology is leading you not only to an error here, but many other errors also. And so if we go back and we correct that for you, we'll solve 100 problems, not just this one problem where you're mistaken. So I kind of like these sort of debates. I don't necessarily feel threatened by them or bothered by them. I kind of say, yeah, that's all right. Let's debate it and let's learn how to do that. So we solve these other problems and we settle the matter. As I used that phrase earlier, solve problems and settle disputes. So sort of like little fires are popping up around campus and we're putting them out. So I like open debates about those things myself. I know some people just don't like it. It's uncomfortable, but I think it's uncomfortable if we don't know how to debate and discuss, if it just deteriorates into name calling. No one likes that. It's uncomfortable then. So the more we learn how to do the skills here under key terms, the more we can say, yeah, open discussion is good. It's not nothing to be worried about. So some action items, what do we do from here? I left this one blank also on purpose because I wanted to see, all right, so what do we do? How do we protect academic freedom? How many of you were familiar with these two things, ACD 201 and Chicago Statement? Were you already very familiar with those? Good. So that's one thing I want to do, just bring those to your attention today so you have those resources available to you if you ever think your academic freedom is being threatened. Let me come back. I'll come back to your question in a second, Bertha. I saw it there. Oh, so you'd already looked it up, Alexander. That's good. So yeah, if you came here and that wasn't, then you might quickly want to look up ASU's. And I think ASU is very impressive in terms of its protection of freedom of speech, freedom of debate. Yeah, Pamela, it depends on the issue. Like I said, I've had to call campus police before. So some issues you just got to call the campus police, issues of harassment. Or you could call the ombudsman if you think that your rights are being threatened. That'd be who you'll go to. If you think you have some proof of slander and libel that's affecting your job, I'd be interested to see. So those are the legal structures. But in the more informal, within a division, what do you do if you feel like you have a problem you want to study and maybe your peers in your division aren't letting you? I think ASU very clearly protects your freedom to pursue that. So you should be able to say to your peers, this is what I'm going to study. This is what I'm going to research. That's within my rights. So action items. Let me answer those two questions, but let me give an action item idea first. One example. How's this for a philosophy one? Know thyself. What I mean is this. What assumptions are you bringing to your research that shape the way you evaluate and judge others? So rather than starting out with others as a threat to your academic freedom, how are you doing in providing academic freedom to other people? Do you have assumptions that limit your ability to appreciate the problems that they're approaching, that they're trying to solve? And I've seen that happen before, that people who, if you ask them, they'd say, yes, I love academic freedom, don't actually encourage a diversity of ideas in the academy because they feel many of those ideas threaten them. And so are we able to, do we actually promote diversity of opinions and ideas? Keeping in mind, I already said, not every opinion is true. You're promoting a freedom of opinions and ideas so you can have debates, so we can see which ones are true to get knowledge. Now, let me go back up here at a couple of questions back. I'll come down the list. So from Bertha, going off Alexander's comment, what about the issue that debating certain loathsome topics legitimizes the topic? Should we give a public forum to those views? Yeah, that's always the worry. And there are some things that are off limits, especially any view that threatens harm to an individual. You're not free to do that. That's like yelling fire in the crowded movie theater. But my view, my sense is that if there are loathsome viewpoints, let them present themselves and then let them be rebutted for all to see. Not just calling them loathsome privately, but don't call them loathsome, show that they're loathsome publicly. And hopefully it could be recorded and put on YouTube, and that's the end of it. Everyone can watch it and see, oh yeah, man, they really took that viewpoint apart. I would never want to believe that. So that's what I would think you'd be free to do, debate them. And then Carla, curious your thoughts on comments by faculty as public citizens. We've seen faculty come under scrutiny by the university or have their employment terminated by things said on social media. Yeah, right. So it depends what the things are, right? So if it'd probably be the same things on social media that could get you in trouble if you said them in person. So it's not just because it's on social media. Now, some of this is legal, and I'm not an expert on the legal side of things, what you can and can't say, but I'm guessing it's like defamation, slander, libel, harassment. If you tweet out something like that, you could get in trouble for that. But you can't get in trouble if you tweet out, I like this political candidate and I'm going to vote for this political candidate. Your freedom is protected for your personal political opinions, or I like this religion and I'm going to subscribe to this religion. Your freedom of religion is protected, but you're not protected to slander somebody on Twitter. And then Madeline, as a political minority at basically any school I go to, academic and intellectual freedom was forefront of my mind when conducting my college search. FIRE was a really good resource. Yeah, so the academy is noted for not having much political diversity, right? Pretty much everyone in the academy thinks the same way politically. So that's one of the personal opinions that should be protected by freedom of thought, academic freedom. We should encourage differences of opinions in politics and religion, not limit them. Not everyone thinks the same way. So have you noticed, Madeline, that ASU encourages differences of opinion politically or in religion? I'm using politics and religion as the two examples. And Alexander, yeah, that's right. It might probably depend why you say that. I don't like this religion because, and then you say something slanderous. Or if you say, I don't believe in this religion because they say the following things which I think are not true. That would be a little different. You should have the freedom to think that way, right? You just don't have the freedom to say, I'm not in this religion, and then what follows from that is slanderous. Or I don't believe this political party because, and then what follows from that is slanderous. What? I'm glad to hear that, Madeline. I would guess that there's such a broad student basis that among the students, there's a lot of differences of political opinion. But among academy, what happens among the faculty if everyone, let's say 99% of people in the faculty all believe the same thing about politics, and then someone gets hired who doesn't think that? That's when we want to make sure we protect academic freedom, right? Because of the possibility of people saying, oh, we all know that view is not true. 99% of us don't agree with you on that one. Well, you have the freedom to debate it still, you'd hope. Have open dialogue. Others, how are we doing? We got a few more minutes for discussions. If you have other examples of impediments to freedom or action items, what would you like to see done to protect academic freedom? Yeah, so Alexander, that the word stupid though could be subjective. Alexander says, I don't know about that. What if continuing to hold that position demonstrates that you're stupid? From the position of those who disagree with you, it probably does demonstrate that. But what you have to do is demonstrate that by reasoned argument. So I suppose, let's say someone gets hired and they want to reinstate King George III as a monarch. And say, well, what? That's not a viable political position. I go back to the flat earth position. And you're being hired on, this would be an interesting thought experiment. Someone who personally believes in flat earth, are they able to give the arguments to show the earth as a sphere, or do they kind of give tweaked versions? Because whenever I read flat earth stuff, they don't actually engage with the arguments about a sphere. So I don't know how far you get in lecturing in space sciences if you're not dealing with the arguments that have actually been given. How far can you get along? That'd be a good question. I mean, we know from the history of thought that you could have an academic fad that goes along for a century or two, is based on false assumptions. So people have to go back and undo a couple centuries of work. So we know that does happen. And that's precisely why we want to protect people to raise questions about assumptions. Even if they're well established assumptions, we want people to be able to question those, because that has happened before. And we don't want to be in that situation again where we're blind to false assumptions that we have. Now, I don't know that flat earth is a common one, but I think in politics and religion it's probably more common, right? Yeah, there's lots of examples like that, Pamela, from science, right? So we want to be able to protect our ability to go back and question our assumptions. And sometimes it might seem like it's a flat earth scenario. Like, you can't question that. Everyone knows that's false, but that's what happens. We like that story of the individual thinker who questions the authority structure and the individual's right. We love stories like that. We have movies all the time like that. So we like that idea, even though most of the time the assumptions are right and the individual questioner needs to agree with the assumption. So most of the time that's the actual outcome. But we want that individual story to be available to us, where the hero comes before the group and is correct and says, no, you guys are wrong and I'm right. That's why the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, right? The idea of an individual having these rights protected against the multitude. Good. How many, any other questions?